Welcome. Today, I have an uplifting message. Why we need to suffer, struggle, and strive. Now, I realize that a little tongue in cheek, but I actually look at that as a very empowering thing, and I'm going to tell you why. So, I am going to talk about part of the explore, experiment, evolve model here, which is our own evolution. And I do want to tell you that I've talked about it a number of times before. If you ever want to go back, there's several episodes actually 1, 2, 11, 19, 30, and 31 all touch on this theme, a different kind of viewpoint of it, but all of those kind of touch on the framework, the E3 framework. So if you want to check those out, great. They could probably be a good supplement to what we're going to talk about today. First things first, no one has the right to be happy, right? So even the Declaration of Independence says we have the right to the pursuit of happiness. We don't have the right to happiness. That's just the way we're going to start this, because at some point I wish, and I'll say it later again, everybody just shut up about being happy, because I think there's a toxicity around it today in our society, and I'll tell you why. But first, I want to get, as always, I want to get clear on meaning, right? Because words create worlds. And so we got suffer, to undergo or feel pain or distress, to endure pain, disability, death patiently and willingly. Struggle, to be coping with inability to perform well or to win, contend with difficulty. And strive, to make strenuous efforts towards any goal. I think those are three great words. And I think we need to be able to do all three of those things routinely. Now, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff today. It's going to bounce around a little bit. One concept might lead to a rabbit hole or two. I'll try to limit it, but I can't make any promises. I never know where this is going to go when we get started. So I want to start off by saying I believe in the concept of flow. And even to the point that I'm actually right now in a masterclass offered by Stephen Kotler's group, the High Flow Collective, who's done a lot of work with this. And I would share with you, I'm sure you all are familiar with flow. You can look up the book. I am not going to butcher the guy's name that wrote the book back, I think it was in the late 80s. It's got far too many consonants in it for me to pronounce it correctly, but it's an awesome book. Now, and I also will tell you, I think that it's possible for us to hold, and I forget whose definition of genius this was, but it's the ability to hold two competing ideas in your head at the same time. And so I'm gonna in one breath tell you, I am a I'm obviously taking a class on flow right now, so I believe in the concept, but I'm also going to tell you where I think it falls short. It doesn't mean I discount flow at all. I just think this other research is quite interesting, and it's by Dr. Adam Fraser. And he just wrote a book called Strive, funny enough. And so here's what's interesting. He's determined by his research that the activities that do these things, so I want you to think about this, activities that do these things, build people's skills, increase confidence, self-esteem, and self-worth, and provide a sense of achievement and feeling of pride. So build their skills, increase their confidence, self-esteem, and self-worth, and provide a sense of achievement and feeling of pride. Those are three great things. The activities that do those have the following components. They're high in challenge, high skill required. There's a distortion of time. Now, here's where it differs from flow. There's low enjoyment and low interest in doing these things. So he's done a ton of research around this, and you can pick up his book, Strive, and read it yourself. Now, in flow, enjoyment and interest are both high. That's the flow concept. In his research, it's indicated that enjoyment and interest are low in the areas that build their skills, give them increased confidence, and provide a sense of achievement. Now, I will tell you, and this is where we're going to get into the happiness thing, right? Flow is considered a component of positive psychology. And that might be kind of my start of a challenge with it. I believe there are concepts in positive psychology that are beneficial, but I'm not a fan of positive anything, because I think it automatically implies avoidance to anything not positive. And I think that's the start of anxiety, right? I think one of the reasons we have so much anxiety in our society is is because of this kind of ridiculous and harmful message that everybody should be happy all of the time. And if you're not, something's wrong. I don't believe that. I don't believe we should be happy all the time. That's not how humans are wired. I mean, science will tell you this. You can go look it up. And we've done a disservice to ourselves and those we care about by constantly preaching this message that everybody deserves, quote unquote, to be happy. And that the minute you're not happy, there's something wrong, that you should avoid that thing because you're not happy. And I think if everybody just really stopped and kind of thought this through, there would be some level of agreement to this. But again, if we're thinking about this just from the side of building people's skills, increasing their confidence, self-worth, and self-esteem, and provide a sense of achievement and feeling of pride, and the research says high challenge, high skill, time distorts, low enjoyment, low interest. Now, the low enjoyment I can get to. Well, this is really interesting for me because low enjoyment I can see, because think about anything you've done that you've gotten better at. Oftentimes you didn't enjoy the process, like practice. You don't enjoy practice, but you do it because you want the thing, right? It's the low interest that's really interesting to me. It's the fact that people are saying that the thing that they did after they got done doing it, while they were doing it, weren't really that interested in doing it. But yet, after they accomplished it, it gave them a sense of pride and esteem and confidence. All of those things came out of it. But if you think about this in context of what you hear today in the media, what you see today at work, if isn't there a lot of talk about following your passion, about enjoying what you're doing? Those things are often, hey, you need to go find your thing and find your bliss. Do this, do that, enjoy. Be interested, follow the things that are your hobbies and make them into full-time jobs. But then the science will tell you, hey, you know what? Most of the stuff that really builds your self-confidence and your self-esteem and your self-worth are things that you don't enjoy and probably aren't interested in doing because they're hard. They're hard to do. So we've got an opportunity here, and we shouldn't avoid things that make us unhappy at all. I think it's actually disconnected from reality. I think we're not teaching people coping mechanisms. We're not empowering people to make it through their life, because life is not happy all the time, nor should it be, right? Life is not always going to be about upside. We need, we actually, it disconnects us from our reality. And it also leads, if we can deal with everything that comes at us, the good, the bad, the ugly, it's going to actually be an overall stronger mental fitness that we have, because we're going to be able to, we have a little grit. We can bounce back when things don't go our way. We can process that in a positive way because it's an opportunity. I mean, it's really, and I've spoken about this before, but if you think about the growth mindset, so the work of Carol Dweck, and she did growth mindset versus, um, oh crap, I'm drawing a blank. Well, it's the opposite of growth mindset, which might come to me in a minute. Fixed. So we have growth and fixed mindsets. And what's interesting is that when in a growth mindset, if you really truly believe that, failure is an inevitability. Like you strive for failure in a growth mindset because you're looking for the gap. You're looking for the growth, and the growth is at the point of failure. So I need that. I need that negative reinforcement. Right. And I think that's all funny because criticism, reinforcement, all that, we throw positive and negative in there. Positive, we give constructive criticism. We had to throw constructive in there. Like, think about this. Criticism is just criticism. But we had to say constructive criticism because that made people feel better about it. Now, does it feel any better to get constructive criticism than it does to get criticism? It's all criticism. But we have to dress it up because now we feel better about it. When in fact, we should just develop the capacity to listen to critique. Because if you get critiqued, that's not bad. It means somebody's observing what you're doing and giving you ideas on how you could do it better. We shouldn't avoid that, But to my knowledge, nobody likes it. I mean, nobody, never, it's always fun, get comfortable being uncomfortable. No, no, not at all. Always be uncomfortable with these things because being uncomfortable with it moves us. If I'm comfortable with it, I don't move. So I should never develop the capacity to be comfortable with all this stuff. I should allow the uncomfortableness. That in and of itself, get comfortable with being uncomfortable, is the biggest bunch of bullshit I've ever heard. Just be uncomfortable. That's okay, because being uncomfortable makes us move. It gives us a thought process of, okay, I don't like this. What can I do about it? Where if I'm comfortable with it, I'll just take it. So we need all of our emotions, not just the ones that make us feel good. And we should not be teaching people there's anything wrong with feeling whatever you want to call it, negative or bad emotions. Anger is nothing wrong with anger. There's nothing wrong with being upset. There's nothing wrong with crying. There's nothing wrong with being somewhat depressed, unless it's clinical depression. Of course, you want to get help with that. But I can be depressed and not in depression. And again, those things are valuable. Emotions are indicators, as my friend Eric Pennington would say, from the Spirit of EQ. Emotions are indicators. They're great indicators. There's no good or bad. They're just indicators. So what we have to figure out is, what are they indicating? We can't, if we stifle them and we avoid them, then we lose that option. We lose that opportunity to figure out what's going on. If we run away from what people say, emotions that don't feel good. We have to have the capacity to deal with that. We have to sit with it. And I recently, because without suffering, struggling, and striving, I don't think we can achieve anything of meaning in our life. I'm just going to tell you that right now. Without struggling, suffering, and surviving or striving, we get nothing of meaning. Because I've done this little experiment recently over the last several weeks where I get groups of people together and I ask them, when have you learned the most in your life? When did you make the greatest leaps forward in your own development? Routinely, everybody in the room says, when I didn't have enough resources, I didn't know what I was doing, I was pushed beyond my capacity, I was left to figure it out, all of those things. Right? Nobody ever said, I learned the most when I was well supported, well funded, had everything that I needed, and it was happy to go to work. That's when I did my best work. No, they all said they grew when they were put in a position that they could fail and that they didn't understand. And that, by the way, they had low enjoyment and low interest. They required a lot of skill. It required a lot of effort, but they weren't necessarily engaged with doing it. They got put in a position that they didn't want to be in. And that's where they said they learned the most. Those were the things that resonated with them the most. But yet, what we do now is I see organizations and people trying to design those opportunities out of people's experiences. I see them trying to relieve stress. Don't make people stressed out. Don't make people work late. Don't overload them. It gives them anxiety. Well, if we think about this and we go back, right? And we're trying to make things fun and happy and we don't want them to be stressed, quote unquote. I'm not talking about chronic stress. Actually, you guys all know this. Stress is good for us. Stress is when we grow. I mean, physically, emotionally, cognitively, when we get stressed, when you go to the gym, you're stressing your body. That's the only way your body grows. The only way you get better at anything is through stress. You want eustress, EUSTRESS, which is good stress. You don't want chronic stress. So two different things. I'm not saying you should be stressed all the time. I'm saying that stress periodically is good for you. Now, leading is about making it easier for people to do their jobs, but do not make their jobs easier. That's not leading. Your job is not to make people's jobs easier. It's to make it easier for them to do their work, not make their work easier. That is not helping anybody. It's not scalable, it's not sustainable, and it's not helping you build clarity and tenacity and grit in people to overcome things when they go wrong, which they inevitably will. To quote one of my favorite 80s movies, and you guys can figure out if you know what this is from, the response, why is that door propped open? The response, screws fall out, the world's an imperfect place. And it is, and they do, and they're always going to. So when we get up in the morning and expect everything to go perfectly or else we're going to be upset, we're going to be upset. We expect traffic to be fine. We expect everybody at work to do their thing. We expect clients to do what they're supposed to do. We expect employees to do what they're supposed to do, our family, all, and then we lose our shit when something doesn't go according to what we had projected. Who's the crazy one in that scenario? Because we get up every day expecting the same thing. Everything is going to go well, and then we're aggravated, 20 minutes into the day because something didn't go the way we wanted it. I will tell you this. The world never did, never will, and does not currently give a shit what you want. Just doesn't. So just stop it. Stop thinking it does. Stop imagining it will. Stop demanding it that it does, or else you're going to be unhappy. I got news for you. You're going to be unhappy at some point. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. Now, I'm just as guilty of this as everybody else. I have to fight this every day. In fact, I will tell you, in the iterations of the leadership development work I did, I've actually put a stop to it because I did several iterations of this over the past 3 or 4 years. And I purposely, when I designed it, made it easy. I only used articles that were 2 or 3 minute reads. I only did 10 or 15 minute videos for people to watch. I didn't do anything that was too much of what I would call a heavy lift. I was said, it'll only take you, an hour to 90 minutes a month to go through this content. And then I realized I was doing people a disservice. Because was I actually telling them that in order to develop, your capacity to lead in an organization should be easy, quick, painless? You shouldn't have to spend more than 90 minutes a month working on yourself to be better at leading an organization. I lost my way. I started to listen to the noise and wanted to make it accessible and low effort. That ain't me. That isn't how I do things. That isn't the effort that I put into things. And so I stopped it. I'm redesigning it right now, and it's going to be a heavy lift. It ain't going to be for everybody. And that's just perfectly okay with me because it should be a heavy lift. There's not going to be a shortcut. There's not going to be a hack. And if somebody does come up to you and says, I have an easy, quick way for you to do anything, punch them in the throat. Because it's a waste of your effort. It's a waste of your time. And it's just wrong. You need to suffer, struggle, and strive. And if somebody tells you you don't, they're robbing you of your potential. I'm going to say that again. You need to suffer and struggle and strive to do anything of meaning in your life. And if somebody tells you you don't have to, they are robbing you of your potential. And you know what all this about negative emotions, and don't take my word for it. There's a couple of different books. I've already told you about Dr. Adam Frazier and Strive. There's a really great one by a guy named Todd Kashdan. And his book is The Upside of Your Dark Side. It's an awesome book. So it's a little paperback. It is a great book though. And it talks about how we need all of it. Now here's what's interesting. He says that a happiness mindset can do the following: interfere with your long-term success, because by the way, happiness and success are not the same thing. So let that sink in for a minute. Happiness and success are not the same thing. So just think about that in your pursuit. Are you pursuing happiness or success? He also says that it can backfire because pursuing happiness often leads to unhappiness because you're just chasing something, which I'll get to in a minute. It can cause problems because sometimes we want and need to feel bad, and we shouldn't feel bad about feeling bad. And you can interfere with other people's happiness. Because think about this. In reality, pursuing your own happiness is largely an ego-based activity. You're pursuing what you want, what makes you happy. So it's largely ego-based. So if you want to pick up his book, you can read a lot more about that, right? Now, let's tackle an item that everybody, how this plays at work, right? Because everybody wants innovation. Innovate, innovate, innovate. Innovate or die. There's all this, right? Everybody wants to, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? All businesses want to innovate. Everybody wants the result of innovation. They just don't want to engage in the process because innovation requires, you guessed it, suffering, struggling, and striving, otherwise known as failure. Because if you're truly innovative, you fail far more than you succeed. I don't know the math. I'm just going to take a stab at it, but I'm going to tell you in pharmaceutical companies, the failure rate of the pharmaceuticals that they develop is dramatically greater than the ones that succeed. And it's probably something north of 80, 85, 90% of all of the things they try don't work out to get one thing to market. But then most of the organizations that I'm familiar with, nobody's celebrating or even accepting failure at that scale. What we want is everything to be perfect. We want ideas to always work, which, by the way, is central to the words that I chose for the E3 model: explore, experiment, evolve. Experiment connotes failure because that's what experiments do. Scientific method is, if I can't prove it wrong, then it's right. Not, I'm going to have an idea and prove it right, regardless of the feedback that I get, which is typically what we err on the side of doing most of the time. We defend like hell our ideas because we're all smart and it's Lake Wobegon and we're all above average. It's even worse in companies because we reward the results and punish the results that occur most often. So we don't celebrate failure, we punish it because we want people in a performance mindset, but yet we demand a learning mindset to get better. So we tell people, we want you to try this, we want you to get better, but yet we don't allow them the space to get better because getting better requires failure. Because I don't just learn new things like that and immediately my performance goes like a hockey stick straight up in the air. It's going to dip. The J curve, remember? I mean, how's that for mixed messaging? Yes, we want innovation. Yes, we want you to develop. Yes, we want you to learn, but we don't want you to fail. We don't want any mistakes. We need more revenue. We can't lose money. This is an example of how happiness can actually lead you away from your own evolution and growth because failure is not fun. You can't develop without it. You can't develop without failure. And yet we avoid it because it doesn't make us happy, doesn't make us feel good. So we're going to avoid it. So we're never going to evolve. We're never going to achieve our true potential. Now, here's the thing. Existentially, suffering, struggling, and striving are what makes us human. Just think about this. One of the most significant benefits of suffering is that it breeds a deep respect for reality, for what is. While the experiences of joy connects us to the realm of infinite possibilities, the experience of pain reminds us of our limitations. We need both. We need to see our limitations. We need to feel our limitations so that we can push through them. Growth mindset. Now, let's just sit with this a minute and really kind of gnaw it down to the bone. So don't try to explain it away. Don't avoid it. Just sit with it. Consider what it means to you. Don't argue with it. Just internalize it and feel it. Don't argue with it. Don't be upset with it. Just internalize it, and figure out what it means to you. The first requirement in our own evolution is a profound relationship with reality. We must see the world as it is, not as we would like it to be. And if we want to have meaningful lives, we need to have a range of different experiences. We need different things, and suffering, struggling, and striving could be the route to get to many of these things. And if we're not willing to suffer, struggle, and survive or strive, then we're not going to get to these things. We're not going to find the things that are meaningful. We're not going to create that meaningful life. I said meaningful. I didn't say happy. I didn't even say successful. I said meaningful. Because to me, that's what we're looking for, a meaningful life. Because what matters, not happiness, not society's version of success, in my opinion. Now, I want you to consider these two thoughts. One is from David Meyer's book in 1992 called The Pursuit of Happiness. So I want you to just think about these two things. So one's from David Meyer's book, one's from Ed Diener and Martin Seligman's paper, Beyond Money Toward an Economy of Well-Being. So first thing from David Meyer's book. The point cannot be overstated. Every desirable experience, passionate love, spiritual high, the pleasure of a new possession, the exhilaration of success is transitory, which means it don't last. So think about that. Every desirable experience, passionate love, spiritual high, pleasure of a new possession, exhilaration of success, promotion, raise, you win, whatever. They're all transitory. They're not built to last. It's the completion myth. And you can read about that in the book Strive if you want to. It's a great little chapter. Now, Diener and Seligman's book or paper, Beyond Money, says, now here's the second part of this. Over the past 50 years, income has climbed steadily with gross domestic product per capita tripling. And yet life satisfaction has been virtually flat. So over the last 50 years, our income, along with GDP, has tripled. It's grown over the last 50 years. While everything about every survey about life satisfaction is flat. More money, more success, not making people happier, not making us more satisfied with our lives. The data is everywhere, yet we cease to believe it. We believe marketing. We believe the messages that we hear and we see in social media, the TV, the radio, whatever. Yeah, buy this, have this, look like this, buy these clothes, go on this vacation, buy a house here, blah, blah, all of those things, right? They're shown to us as making us happy. That once we achieve X, Y, and Z, we will be happy. I don't think it's true. I don't think you believe it's true. So what do we do? Where does this leave us? Number one, shut up about happiness. Let's just shut up about happiness. Let's just forget that happiness exists. Here's the reason. We have to realize that happiness ensues from the pursuit of something else. It isn't something you pursue. It's much like in any organization. Revenue is a pursuit of something else. It's not something you pursue. If you pursue revenue, you make bad decisions. Typically, it's not scalable and sustainable. And the other part of this, to be honest with you, happiness comes from inside of you, not from people or things. Nothing outside of you can make you happy. There's this great quote. It's the happiness you find at the top of the mountain is the happiness you brought with you. There's no better example of the goal orientation. Somebody telling you achievement of that goal isn't going to make you happy. Happiness is by and large, happiness is a choice. Happiness is a state of mind that you're in complete control of at any given time. You do not need anybody or anything to be happy. And as long as you think you do, you're never going to be. Because again, go back to Myers's book, all of those experiences, transitory. And the next thing, what are you going to do? Don't make other people's happiness or stress your responsibility. Not only can they not make you happy, you can't make anybody else happy. So just stop that as well. Stop trying to make people happy. You you're not that important and you're not that powerful. Nobody put you in charge of other people's happiness. Here's what you can do. The most important thing you can do, take care of yourself and show other people how to be happy. That's if you want to impact other people, change your own behavior. And you can always remember what Adam Smith said in The Wealth of Nations. It is not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker that we expect our dinner, but from regard to their own self-interest. We address ourselves not to their humanity, but to their self-love, and never talk to them of our own necessities, but of their advantages. Nobody but a beggar chooses to depend chiefly upon the benevolence of his fellow citizens. Translated, self-interest is the path to collective happiness because you focus on yourself. Worry about yourself. Some of this stuff you've heard since you were a kid. And remember that if you fancy the activity of leading yourself or anybody else, you got to go back to Dr. Adam Fraser stuff. Challenge high, skill high, time distorts, enjoyment, interest are low. This means that the people that you will be leading, the people in your organization, the people on your team, your family, the people you care about, have little to no interest in these activities. They are not going to be drawn to them. Just remember that. The things that are going to build self-esteem, build self-worth, make me have a sense of accomplishment, build my skills, I'm not going to be interested in and I'm not going to enjoy. So what does that mean to you and the people that you care most about? What are you going to do differently now that you know? Quit lying to people, first of all. It ain't fun. This thing isn't supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be meaningful. That's what evolution is. Evolution, your own personal evolution is meaningful. But it's a heavy lift. It's hard work. And that's okay. Because if it was easy, everybody would do it. All right, enough about that. And the uplifting message about why we all need and should run towards suffering, striving, and struggling. At this point, I'm going to tell you what I always tell you. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other. And remember, it's not about what we accomplish in our lives, but who we are becoming along the way that matters most. Take care.